Hooray!
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
And welcome to the Thunderdome. No, there's no Thunderdome.
Wait, what?
Sorry. Bonnie, are you able to get your camera on?
I don't know what's going on with the camera.
You could try leaving and coming back and seeing if it'll let you turn your camera on.
All right, that's it off. That's it back on. All right. All right.
Maybe
I will leave.
yeah, leave the studio and come back and
I will be
hopefully it
back.
works. All right.
Come back though.
Technical difficulties.
I will.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
good. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We are very excited to have everybody here to talk about celebrating trans joy. We are here for our fundraiser where we're trying to raise $60,000 in 2 days. And we are actually nearing the end of day 2. And so we're hoping that we can raise lots and lots of funds over the next, what is it, like 8 hours, something like that. I mean, it's not very many left. So if you could help us out, that would be fabulous. And we are, oh, that's the wrong link. I had the wrong link loaded up into my linky place. Here's the link to our fundraiser if you'd like to donate. And I wanted to just let everyone know that we are at 24,880 right now, which is 41%, which is super exciting. We've made lots of progress on the fundraiser throughout the day, so hopefully you can help out and we can get to our goal, which we need to get to. Today, one of the things that we're doing for these streams is celebrating trans and non-binary joy because it is so important right now to focus on and emphasize the joy that we feel as trans people and even as cis people, because there's so much going on right now and we want to amplify the joy because that's how we get through, right? And that's how we connect and that's how we can make sure that we keep going. So we wanted to focus on celebrating trans joy for this stream. We are doing that in a really cool and exciting way. We are actually doing a workshop exploring gender and gender euphoria, which is something that we don't talk about a lot. A lot of trans people talk about dysphoria, gender dysphoria a lot, but we don't talk necessarily about euphoria. And euphoria is such an important thing that we experience, but it also is something that cis people can experience as well. So, you know, we appreciate everybody being here to explore your own gender and your own gender euphoria because it's something that everybody gets. For this stream, let me put the worksheet in there just so that in the chat so that people can see that. This is what we're going to use. If you'd like to go there and check out this worksheet that we're going to walk through together once we get into that part of the program. But first, we're going to talk about some of our moments of joy that we've had over the last year, over the last 6 months. Kara, you were going to take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can start off just to get us rolling here. My sort of moment of joy, I would say, from the past year, it's less than a year for sure, but around that sort of time period is I got married last year to my spouse, and it's a trans person for trans person relationship. So it was a really, really amazing day. It was a beautiful August summer day. We got married in a nature conservancy and just had all of our loved ones close, and it was really probably the best day of my life. So I think that kind of stands out to me as a moment of, you know, euphoria, just pure happiness. I think that day, a little bit of nerve, but it was really fun. Yeah, Rachel, I know you have a couple of peoples. Would you like to?
There's people who couldn't be here today, so I got their speeches of moments of joy that they've had so that I can read those. Lisa is one of our staff members who, what is her title? I'm so sorry. I feel bad. Web
portal manager, something.
Portal manager, that's right.
Yeah.
So Lisa is our portal manager. She does lots of techie stuff for us. And she sent this along for me to read. After 46 years of mental health issues and self-hatred, My wife, Samantha, realized if she was going to live, she had to be who she really was. The culmination of a lifetime of existing and 4 years of therapy brought us to our greatest joy. Samantha finally can see her true self in the mirror. She received her gender affirming surgeries this year. She can now truly live. The smile on her face is my greatest joy. And she wanted me to know that she talked to Samantha, so Samantha was okay with her sharing that moment of joy, which is just fabulous. Yeah.
That's so cool. I love it.
Anybody else have a moment of joy that you'd like to talk about?
Can I have a moment of joy that's coming up, but it's
Yeah.
kind of been happening?
Yes, absolutely.
So after this stream is over, we're getting our new dog. Billy Bob is going to be joining our family with Lugnut. So my old lady dog, she passed away, I don't know, a month ago. And my young pup Lugnut has been missing a companion. And so we've searched and we've found Billy Bob. That's his name. So Lugnut and Billy Bob. I mean, how appropriate. They are fast friends. When we've met the dogs together, had the dogs together. They were super excited. So we've met them twice. The foster parents are coming to bring him today, and then now he's going to stay with us. So we're super excited. There's some nerves, but it's so fun to have a new family member coming. So
You basically have a Disney movie going on with those dog names. I love it.
you know, it's perfect.
How about you, Aiden? Do you have anything you want to share?
Well, sure. It's so interesting, this, engaging in this conversation about joy. It's just never that simple for me. And so thinking about what Kirby just said, Billy Bob and Lugnut, what's the movie? Go to Manhattan or something. But Billy Bob is coming on the heels of the loss of another one. So that's when I think about the thing that came to mind for me was, for years I've been working hit and miss, and then more vigorously in the last couple of years on my book, Trans Children in Today's Schools. And it's just been nothing but torture. Is there a shred of joy along the way? No, it doesn't seem like it. Maybe like, oh, that's a good sentence, and that's about it. So the book's done, and it doesn't mean that joy showed up because it got done. Because now it's going out in the world, and all my insecurities are showing up. And man, you put a sentence with a period in print, and it's there forever to haunt you if it's not perfect. And even if it is perfect today, it will not be perfect tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So where I found some real joy and some relief was actually when I asked a person who I don't know very well, but respect very much, who his name's Andrew Solomon, and he's an author, New York Times bestseller kind of guy. If he would read my book and provide me with a blurb, and lo and behold, he said yes, and I got that thing. I got his blurb back, and it just, I think I immediately cried, just because the things that he talked about were things that I was so desperately hoping I could accomplish. It's more than just, here's what you need to know about trans youth. Here's what challenges schools are navigating, whatever, but the layers underneath. And so those are the things that he commented on. And I think that's got to be my one of my top joys this past year, for sure. How's that?
That was great. I love that. No, it is interesting because it is often, everything is super complex with people's emotions and how they feel about things. And, with euphoria comes, dysphoria around different things. And, I think that is, yeah, it's interesting to It is interesting though to try and frame it for a moment though from the positive sort of side, and instead of I think it's very easy to get caught up in that sort of negative mindset in your own head, and then it becomes a much darker place. But being able to focus on those positive things is really great too.
Well, and often I think when we have joy, the reason we know it's joy is because we've had times where there wasn't joy there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm talking about the book and how hard that is, and thinking, is this going to work? You know, and now seeing that people actually are responding to it the way that you hoped, then we can feel it because we've gone through those like times when maybe it wasn't great. Like losing a dog is not great, but you know, first of all, I was given a chance to love the dog, but also now I get a chance to love on another dog. So, you know, super, super exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have another one to share from one of our staff members. So Jade had this ready to share earlier, and I forgot. We didn't have time because we had a lot of stuff we were trying to go through in the earlier stream. So I asked her to please send it to me because she had told me what it was about. And I said, I've got to have that. Oh, we've got Bonnie. We've got Bonnie. Bonnie.
So sorry.
Bonnie, hi.
Yay.
Did we lose Aiden though? Wait,
We lost Aiden.
We traded one for the other.
We
Have you
lost
ever noticed
Aiden.
we're never in the same room together?
I know. Interesting.
Yay. I think I'm figuring something out.
Yay. I'm glad you got your camera to work. That's wonderful. Woohoo. Here you are.
Here I am.
Here. We're just talking about some moments of joy, trans-related joy that we've had in the last 6 months to a year, or even just moments of joy in general, because joy is wonderful. And hopefully we'll get Aiden back here. But I was about to read one from our staff member, Jade, who is our operations specialist. And she ran this one by me and said, should I talk about this? And I'm like, yes, please. So here is what she wrote. A couple of weeks ago, I saw George Takei speak at a small local theater in a rural conservative area of Pennsylvania, not far from where I live. George Takei is one of the actors from the original Star Trek series and an activist, in case you didn't know. He spoke mostly about his activism, and at the end of his talk, he took questions from the audience. The last question was from a retired military man who was an engineer. He asked how he can better protect his trans daughter. George talked about building allies and building bridges, using an example from his life where he was working with Martin Luther King Jr. The audience gave a thunderous round of applause that felt so supportive. I was incredibly heartened that in such a conservative area there was still so much goodness. And of course, the Star Trek universe is so very inclusive. So I was just like, yes, please share that. We have to have that. I love it.
And a military engineer.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, that
I know.
That makes me teary.
Yep. Absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah. It's lovely.
Yeah.
How about you, Bonnie? You think of any?
Oh my gosh. All of my trans joys through the lens of my doodle, Liam, who just turned 15 a few days ago.
Oh my gosh, 15.
I know.
Oh wow.
And when they transitioned, they were 7, and they were definitely she, her, and they'd get very upset if you said he, him, or anything that wasn't she, her. But in the last year, they have thought, well, actually, I think they, them is more accurate. And I see this sort of relaxing and even more expansion and unfolding of who they are as they've allowed themselves and stepped more into this truth of who they are. And I was also thinking about how watching their journey, it's been really interesting because they definitely pick and choose what parts of them they like. like when they were identifying solely as she, her, it was very clear that they were like, I like these parts of being a girl, but I don't like those parts, so I'm not going to do those parts. And their sister and I were like, huh, I didn't know we could do that. And how it's allowed us to kind of explore what we've just automatically taken on as girls, and not really questioned or examined. It's like, huh, if Liam's doing that, maybe I could do that. So, I don't know. Liam just is joy, and they bring me a lot of joy. And them being themselves, just it gives everybody around them permission to be themselves. It's just very lovely to be around.
Oh, yeah. My kid has helped me more with being better about correcting people on my pronouns than ever. I used to not be as good about correcting people on my own pronouns, and he's helped me with that so much. He just will be right on it, and he's like, "Mom, you need to just tell him." And just experiencing the joy that he has in his own discovery of his gender and what he's going through, and then my own experiences with my own gender. It's just, yeah, it's such a cool experience. I did talk a little bit earlier about Mercury Stardust, and I was actually not completely accurate, and I wanted to clear that up because Mercury Stardust is the trans handyman, and she's on TikTok, and I'm putting her link in the chat because she's so lovely and she helps so many people. And I was talking about how she was raising funds on Trans Day of Visibility with another TikToker named what is it here? Where is it? It's Alluring Skull is the name of the TikToker. The name is Jory, and they were hoping to raise $1 million for Point of Pride, which is actually a nonprofit that helps trans non-binary people with funds for surgeries, hormone therapy, free binders, and gaffs. So it's a great organization. They were hoping to raise $1 million, and after the whole fundraiser ended, they raised $2.25 million.
Wow.
For it. And it was just like explosion of joy, to see that. So I love Mercury Stardust. She's one of my favorite TikTokers. She's so fabulous. Yeah. So if you get a chance, check her out. She is lovely. So we are here to talk about gender euphoria and explore our genders. And we have a worksheet, and I put the link in the chat, but if let me put it again in case people. Oh wait, we actually have a little thing. Charlie usually runs all this stuff. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm not as good at Charlie at running the little techie parts.
I think
here we go. Look, book. If you go there, you can download the little worksheet, and go just kind of work along with us on it, and you can keep it on your computer or you can write it on a paper or whatever makes sense. And we're going to just kind of move through the worksheet and move through the different questions. There are little discussions that we'll have about each section of the worksheet, and then we'll talk also about moments of joy that we've had, because those are also important and it is a part of that euphoria. So I'm going to pass it over to Kirby, who's going to take the first part.
Thank you. Yeah, so hopefully if you have the worksheet up, I'm just going to be working through that. And I can talk about my own answers, but we can also hear from everybody else who's willing to share. So understanding gender euphoria, a worksheet for everyone. This worksheet is for anyone who wants to better understand gender euphoria, trans, non-binary people, and how they express and experience their own gender. Gender identity. Gender identity or gender is one's internal understanding as male, female, a blend of both, or neither, or neither. I guess whatever you want to say. Consider your own gender. Do you identify as male, female, something else? Um, so again, talking about our kids, I think is really helpful because my son has helped me think through gender in a totally different way than I ever did. And kind of like Bonnie, it helped me realize that there's some things about being female, assigned female at birth, that I don't necessarily enjoy. And so I have come to realize that I can be kind of whatever I feel like I am. So for me, I definitely consider myself female. So she, her fits. However, I think I'm definitely more on the toward the masculine side of that, meaning that um, girly stuff, like what we consider girly, which is all clothing anyway. But like if I'm wearing a dress, I don't feel comfortable. I feel very out of my element. I don't feel good in my body. So for me, it's being able to be a tomboy, not having to wear makeup necessarily. But he him does not fit. They them sort of might, but I still feel pretty good about she her. So I'm sticking with that for now. I know my friend over here, Rachel, has always seemed to see me very clearly, and so I know has I guess always assumed that I was non-binary. So I think in a way I probably am a little bit non-binary, um, and I do realize that there's some fluidity there. So some days I actually feel more feminine, where maybe makeup actually makes me feel good, and then other days that is not the case. So I think for me there's some fluidity there. Um, I don't know if anyone else wants to share what your thoughts are considering your own gender. Do I identify as male, female, something else? I want to share.
I mean, I can go. I'd be happy to talk about it. Yeah. So when I think about like the gender sort of question, I kind of get a little bit like specific with my wording with it, just because I think it is. I mean, I don't know if there are words that specifically explain how I actually do perceive my own gender. What I tell people is I identify as a non-binary trans woman, because I don't believe I definitely feel comfortable with she, her pronouns. I love, wearing feminine clothes, having makeup, growing my hair out, all those things that are stereotypically like feminine sort of ideals or traits or things like that. But I see my gender almost as a four-dimensional object, something that can be experienced but not necessarily seen or perceived. It's something that's more complicated than I think language can really give it, So that's kind of where I come at with it. And I feel really comfortable existing in sort of like an unknown space in a way.
Gotcha. I like that idea.
Well, and my sense of gender has shifted over time for sure. I first came out as non-binary about, I was little. So it was probably 12, 13 years ago, something like that. And at first I really felt like I was gender fluid. Like I felt like I had femininity and masculinity that made sense to me, and that it moved through fluid space, and sometimes I liked being feminine still, and all of that. And then as I kept going, I realized that that didn't quite fit actually, and that I felt like the gender I had, there was no name for it. It didn't really none of the names made sense. Um, and so I started to figure out, because I tried to think of it as a masculine and feminine, and realized it was none of those things. Like it didn't exist on that on that particular spectrum. And then as I kept going, I realized that it bothered me that I didn't know what my gender was, and I kept always trying to kind of search for this idea of what is my gender. Um, and I wasn't sure. And so I actually made a word up to help describe my gender. I have 4 different words I use to describe my gender. I use trans, I use non-binary, I use genderqueer, and also gender bereft, which is a word that I made up that means I don't know my gender, I'm not sure what it is, but and that fact bothers me. Because some people don't know what their gender is and they're fine with that, but it bothers me that I can't figure out what my gender is, and so I've been using gender bereft for a lot of years, and there's quite a few people that have picked it up as well. They're like, "That's me," so that's always really cool to be able to help someone see a word that resonates with them as well. So my gender's always doing strange stuff, and lately I've been finding like this came up with this shirt. Actually, I had a cut of this shirt that had a V-neck and looked more feminine, and I put it on and I was like, I can't wear this. I can't. I just can't wear this. And so I had to go back and get another one that has, a more neutrally cut, I guess. That's a whole nother question right there. But I just and even I if I put makeup on, I start to feel weird and dysphoric, but I also absolutely don't like people saying sir or he him for me. I don't want facial hair necessarily as awesome as Aiden's facial hair is and my dad's facial hair. I don't want it. That would make me feel weird. But I also am growing a little mustache because it's that time of my life where that stuff starts happening, and I'm fine with that. Like, I have no problem with that. So I don't even know. I don't even know. That's me.
Anyone else want to share? You don't have to if you don't want to.
I can share. I also want to ask about the word bereft, because for me that that word has a feeling of loss and grief. Is that
There is like a feeling of just being disturbed and feeling lost because I don't know what my gender is. Yeah, absolutely.
hmm. Um uh I never questioned whether I was she her, because, well, that was just not part of my vocabulary, even though we're up to 4 trans people in my family. I have a sibling and 2 nibblings, and then my kid. But it just wasn't part of the vocabulary. And luckily, for the most part, I feel like I am she her. I don't feel like it was an especially good thing to be feminine. And I feel like uh I don't know. I feel like some days I embrace being curvy and having curly hair and styling it in stereotypically feminine ways, and then other days what was definitely praised when I was growing up was being aggressive and competitive, and that traditionally has been more masculine. So it's, in some ways, I've felt like I had to kind of go back, and it's been very helpful having a trans kid and just exploring what is female, what is male, what does it mean to be these things. So I would say I'm probably 90% female, and there are definitely some parts of me that feel more masculine. Does that mean I'm non-binary though? or is that just the female feminine being expressed and felt in a stronger, more assertive sort of way? That's where I kind of get lost in the weeds on all of that. I think that's all I have to say for now.
Appreciate it. Like it. Yeah. Do you want to share, Aiden?
I have a few thoughts. Did I just hear a motorcycle?
Yeah, I don't know. It was
Your
the-
motorcycle is feminine or masculine? Like, come on. We gotta nail some things down. I think like any of us are talking about the journeys that we've made looking at gender, or not needing to, or not having the opportunity to, or whatever. But for me personally, actively negotiating it for much of my life, and then proactively doing it with respect to my own gender journey, and thinking like, well, so where is it? And I think it's been 25 years since I began some transition related steps, and I don't feel like my gender has changed one iota, not one bit. It looks differently to others, and others will take those aspects of our personalities, of our identities, our interests, and they'll say, yeah, that's masculine, that's feminine, and then have expectations about it. It can change person to person. It can change uh, within your family. You step outside of your family into various communities that you might be part of, and it's just a confusing mess that says you don't get to be you. And therefore, I think being a gender diverse person, I don't feel like my experience is terribly unique from anyone else's. That whole idea of masculinity and femininity is such an imposition. It is really frustrating. So I spent 10 years trying to grab a hold of my gender in a more definitive way. And I've got it, my gender is very aligned with how I stepped into the world with an identical twin sister. So that why is my gender so different than my sister's, or is it, so it's just a really interesting compilation of thoughts where I get to the place of going, there's no such thing as masculinity, no such thing as femininity, because the thing, when we assign those words, they are meaningless, because we can't say that being empowered is masculine. We can't say being vulnerable is feminine. It's I feel very strongly that that is the wrong way to go about it. So when I think about when somebody says, yeah, so what's your gender? I say yes. But that's as close as I can get to answering it. And that feels good to me. So the other part about the gender piece is I have zero inclination. I shouldn't say zero. That's an exaggeration. I don't have hardly any opportunities like this moment to say more about my gender, because I'm too busy addressing what other people think my gender is, what other people decide. And that could extend into the larger community, predominantly cisgender community, but also within the various gender diverse communities. Everyone decides something about my gender, and very, very, very few people will even ask. So it's an interesting dilemma. And here's what's I also find really intriguing and sometimes a little unsettling, is when I find somebody that can meet me there, and not they're engaging with me as me, with that yes gender. And I don't, and then I think, well, what am I supposed to do? because I'm too busy putting it on for other people. If I go and step into a room and do some gender education for teachers, for example, I'm going to present them a certain reflection of gender that I think might move them. Or if I'm engaging with somebody, I think, well, how do I adapt to my gender in a way that they feel more comfortable? And it's a constant bouncing off of other people. And again, I really don't think this is terribly unique to any of us within the trans and non-binary worlds. This is what we all do, and what we all, I'm speculating, we all wish we could be released from. So yeah, I look forward to a day where gender doesn't have to be a strategy, that my gender can just be me. And where do I see that the most? Where do I hear my own like hardly formed thoughts show up so clearly? It's in with the little kids. I'm just me. I'm just me. And that's who they want to be. That's who I wanted to be. That's who I still want to be. So I don't know. Good question. And you'll get no answers from me except for gender. Yep.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think you're so right about the kid thing. I mean, that's why it's helped me with having a kid who was gender diverse, right? Because I started thinking about things in a different way because he's just being him. That's the point, right? He's just being him, and I had to adjust to it. So yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, can I just say shout out to twins? I'm a twin as well, so that's awesome.
So many trans twins. I know so many.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm a twin.
And Charlie's a trans twin.
Mhm.
Gil
Yeah,
is
Charlie. Yeah.
so and Gil.
And Gil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super fascinating.
So
But yeah,
many.
I'd just like to say, and I agree with you. I think like what I came up against when I first came out and things like that was that, like, well, when I first came out, I came out as strictly non-binary, and I was like trying to figure out what that kind of meant and what that looked like, and I was looking for definitions for everything online and all these things. But what I really came to is like, really, these words mean only things to, like, everybody has their own concept of what the definition of masculine and feminine and non-binary, you know, like all these things. Everybody has their own conception completely. And then, yes, we all put, like, everybody tries to put those conceptions onto other people to try and read them and try to figure out what's going on with them and you know, really try to investigate who they are as a person and what they should expect, how they're going to act and those things, because I think we are also almost traumatized from like the way that we're, like, these gender norms are enforced on us. And I think, yeah, what I've tried to really do with myself is try to, you know, deconstruct that sort of idea for myself of like, what do these words mean for me, and how is that limiting my own view of what it can be for somebody else? And I think that is a really important practice to be able to start doing and deconstructing.
Well said. Well said. The second part of that question about gender identity in the worksheet is think of a childhood memory of doing something stereotypically male or female, whether it matched your gender or not, and how did others react? How did you feel? We some of us may have touched on some of this already. I know that Bon, you kind of mentioned, you know, your family thinking that more being more assertive maybe was the way to be or whatever. So for me, when I think about this, so like stereotypical male and female, for me it was I was not allowed to walk out in the sunshine without a shirt on, and I hated that. That really bothered me. And so when I was not allowed to just be like my dad when he was out mowing the lawn, where he would just take his shirt, whip his shirt off, and it was no big deal. If I did that, then that was suddenly like, oh, no, put your shirt back on. And as a little kid, that never made sense to me because honestly, at that age, I was flat as a board. So like, what was the big deal? And yet my friend, you know, over here who was signed male at birth was allowed to just wander around without a shirt on and no one even questioned it. So I noticed that very early on, and I always had a hard time with it. So that's me.
I was going to say something exactly about that because I was so mad about that when I was a kid. I was so mad about that. And that there were differences like that I'm like, these don't make any sense. Why are they like this? And nobody could really answer it except for just saying that's how it is, right? And like, I don't, doesn't make any sense to me. And all the weird things like, you know, you can't wear this or you can't play with this. And, you know, I was a nerdy kid, and I was at the theater every single weekend in 1977 for Star Wars with my dad, and my life was steeped in nerdiness. And I wasn't supposed to like that stuff. I was a girl at that time. People thought I was a girl, so yeah, I wasn't supposed to like that. And even when Kai was little, people would reinforce those kinds of things on him all the time when he was little. Um, even in like spaces where you would think that wouldn't happen, you know, it still was happening. I'm like, this old thing again. I guess it's still there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I remember very distinctly when my son we just first disclosed to everybody, and I remember going, "Oh my gosh, I've been raising this child as a girl." So, you know, inadvertently teaching him to be smaller, making himself sort of invisible, like, you know, being very careful not to be in anyone's space. And now I suddenly have a boy. And I remember thinking, like, do I have to teach him sort of to be rude and like take up space? And like, and I had like Carl, like I laughed at myself. I'm like, what is happening? But I seriously had a moment where I was like, oh, and I also have to teach him how to open the door for people, for women, and carry the groceries. Like, I mean, he helped anyway, but like there was a conscious thought in my mind that, oh my gosh, I haven't been doing this right. And then I realized how silly it was and had a good laugh at myself. But it was like there was a moment where I was like, oh no, I've done this all wrong, and now I have to go try to fix it. So yeah.
Aiden brings up those little pink bows they put on the bald head of an infant. Yes, we actually wouldn't let him do it. When Kai was little, we're like, no, no bows. Yeah.
I think the only practical advice, I don't know, the only practical lesson that I felt like I really had to learn, moving from being received and perceived as a woman in the world to a man, was I have to pause for a second before leaving an elevator. Otherwise, women are going to mow me over. I didn't know that was a thing, but you gotta, you know, for your own safety, you gotta pause a second.
Right. That's so funny. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna keep moving here. So the next
Wait, hold on before you move on. I just wanted to mention briefly, very briefly, that we are here raising funds for our spring fundraiser. We are trying to raise $60,000 in 2 days. We're on day 2, and I have an update for where we're at. If you would like to donate to the fundraiser, I'm putting the link in the chat that you can go to. Please share with your friends. Please attach it to a crow and hope that the crow drops it on somebody. Whatever you need to do to get the word out that our fundraiser is happening. And like I said, we're trying to raise $60,000, and right now we are at 25,880, which is 43%. So we are getting there, but we don't have very many hours left to go. We're getting near 7 hours to go. So please help us finish out this fundraiser strong. So I just wanted to get that in there before we moved on to the next part.
Nice. I like it. Commercial break.
Yes.
The next part of the form that I am doing is the gender expression. Gender expression is how a person expresses gender through dress, body language, and more. List a few ways that you enjoy expressing your gender, such as clothes and hairstyles, your mannerisms, or other aspects of who you are. I think this is one of those things that, especially, so I do a lot of parent support groups. Parents have a really hard time differentiating between gender identity and gender expression. So if they see their child who told them that they're actually a girl, and yet they still like to, wear t-shirts and jeans, somehow that's hard for them to process. And so I think about my own gender expression and how and often I'll bring it up to them. Like I definitely feel like a female. Like I said, I'm sort of non-binary, but I definitely feel comfortable being she, her. But I definitely, my expression is much more gender neutral. And like I love jeans and t-shirts, and makeup is not something I love all the time. And hardly ever wear dresses. In fact, if I do, I feel super uncomfortable. So for me, it's those are the things that make me feel good in my body, is to be able to wear clothes like t-shirts like that I'm wearing now makes me feel really good in my body. Um, Mannerisms, like I don't think I'm a very feminine person. So for me, just being able to be um have expressions like I don't man spread, but like I don't feel like I want to be, I know isn't that funny, the word that man spread, but anyway, I don't want to like take up tons of space, but like I'm also learning to take up some space. Like that's part of my whole work I've been doing. But yeah, like definitely not dresses for me. um Anyone else care to talk about things that make you feel like you're expressing your gender in a way that maybe others can see?
Well,
I
I wear.
can. Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Rachel. No, you
You
got it.
you.
No, you, no, you,
Oh,
no, you.
okay. I wear a necklace that it has the trans symbol on one side and the genderqueer flag on the other. So that's definitely a thing that I'm like, hey, guess what? Here, and I the last time I got my hair cut, my spouse and I do each other's hair. And the last time she did my hair, I said, please make it as queer as possible, because that's just what felt like the right thing for me. So, yeah, that those are indicators for me.
Yeah, I was just gonna talk about like, it's interesting because I came out as an adult. I was in college when I came out as trans, and I was, you know, the interesting thing is like my gender expression changed so much throughout that time, just because I had never allowed myself to express my gender in any, like even like in masculine ways. I really just did the bare minimum because I really hated that sort of feeling, right? I would only wear like gym shorts and a hoodie. That's like all I would wear all the time. And I was like, couldn't stand being, in the Kohl's men's section looking at stuff and trying on jeans. I hated that. I hated that so much. But when I came out, it became this really interesting, like, and like almost unnerving experience to try to like explore things that were like that I wanted to try out, but I didn't know, I didn't have any basis for them, right? So like when I went, it was like going through a second puberty, even before I started hormones. I was like, trying on dresses and all these things, and I didn't know what looks like, too young, what looks too mature. It's like I didn't have the eye for anything yet of like what are the social things surrounding these like articles of clothing that I was trying to wear and figure out, or how I was walking, what I was doing. I was really policing myself in so many ways while I was trying to at the same time expand what I did and trying to do those things. So it was a really interesting activity, but I think I've finally gotten to a point where I am able to, wake up and wear whatever clothes that I kind of feel, attracted to that day, or like what things that, make me actually feel good. I don't necessarily need to have the highest feminine looking like headphones that I would buy off Amazon or something, right? I don't have to have those. I can have kind of whatever color I want at this point and still feel very secure in my sort of gender expression and that thing. I think a lot of that also comes with having transitioned with hormones and in other ways. So I think, it's an interesting, complicated process of like how that kind of adapts and changes over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I distinctly remember it. So here's how I know I'm definitely not male. Because if anyone accidentally calls me he, him, which has happened to me before, it does not, I don't like it. But when I was younger, so I was a tomboy, but my hair got cut really, really short to the point where people just assumed I was like a boy. And I was in a girl's bathroom, and this woman was like, you need to go in the other bathroom. And I was mortified that she would even think that I was a boy. Like, how dare she? And I mean, I was so embarrassed about that I never let my hair get cut that short ever again. So for me, that was a very vivid memory. Yeah. Any Bonnie or Aiden, do you want to say anything about it? You don't have to.
The only thing I think of is from what you just commented on, Kirby, and that is the shame that shows up when somebody does that. It's so hard to describe. It's so hard to say where it comes from, and why. You know, it is it's tough. It's tough, and that is. Again, something that all of us navigate in any number of ways. And of course, gender looms large. If you dare to transgress gender, you don't even know you're daring. You just got a haircut.
Yeah.
And you have a memory for life of how you felt and how that has dictated your actions. We all have those. And how do you unpack it? What do you do with it when you find it? How do you free yourself from it? And sometimes we can, and sometimes it's just easier to acquiesce and say, well, a short haircut or, having longer hair would be really fantastic. And it's not worth the price tag. Yeah.
I mean,
so here we are, we're in a different world.
Right. Well, the truth is, I actually like short hair on me because it's so much easier to deal with. But that, like you say, that memory, I was probably maybe 9, is in my head, and I'm 50 now. And so like, I still to this day will have longer hair. And, and that's something I think maybe need to unpack a little bit now that I'm thinking about it. But, that's the truth.
Yeah.
Well, and those comments that people make that I think a big key of that shame component too that you're talking about, Aiden, is the unexpectedness of you're just going along, being yourself, doing your thing, and then here comes somebody with a comment, and then you're like, oh, I need to pay attention to that, and now I feel ashamed. Yeah, and I've got lots of things like that comments that were made, over my life that stick with you and come back at you in the night. And if those people realized, like, I mean, some of them don't care that their comment comes back to me. But if people realized how much things like that come back, maybe don't talk about people's appearance, let's maybe not talk about some of those things. Or if we do talk about something that person did for themselves, like the way they put their outfit together rather than how it looks on their body, things like that are little changes we can make about how we talk about people so that it doesn't stick with them forever.
Well, and we haven't even talked about, so I'm just only going to bring this up, but we're not going to go there because we haven't even talked about the fact that for me, my puberty took over and suddenly I am looking a certain way that people are assuming very clear things about me that I was not at all ready for. And I was pissed about because I, like I say, I grew up as a tomboy, and having people suddenly see me a different way and comment on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll step off my soapbox there because that'll piss me off. On that note, I'm going to hand it over back to Rachel.
Yay! Am I next? No, Kara's next.
Oh, sorry.
Kara's got page 2.
Next. Page 2.
Page 2.
So
everyone flip the page.
Flipping the page. Next one on your PDF. Now we're going to be talking a bit about gender euphoria. And so what we mean by that is gender euphoria is the joy, elation, relief, or comfort when a person's gender feels affirmed by themselves or by others. And there's a few different ways that like people can describe the way they experience euphoria, gender euphoria. And that could be things like saying, I feel like others see the real me. It feels like a fog has lifted, or I've warm fuzzies all over, right? Like that sort of, so some of those like sort of descriptions of like what that can kind of feel like internally to somebody. And oftentimes trans and non-binary people experience gender euphoria when, you know, getting from outside validation as well. We've talked a lot about, you know, how people and their perceptions of you can impact your emotional state and that sort of thing. So gender euphoria can work the same way, where, you know, getting gendered correctly by a stranger can give you euphoria. Having joy at seeing your reflection in a mirror can also give you euphoria. Or, you know, being in a same gender space and somewhere where, or even for trans people in an all trans space where everybody can kind of see each other as who they really are, can be really euphoric for a lot of people. So gender euphoria is usually discussed by trans and non-binary people, but really anyone can experience it. And you probably have yourself. So thinking back to that previous question of like, what were the things that you do to express your, you know, gender and who you are, like, what about those things made you feel good about them? What made them feel euphoric? Think about a time that you embodied a few of those characteristics and what it felt like for yourself. What happened? That sort of thing. Or we can also, the second half of this, this is an either or sort of situation. If you can't think of a specific moment like that, write about what could make you feel this way and what it might be like to experience that. So yeah, does anybody want to start? If not, I can go first, actually. That might be easier.
You go.
Hey, you know what? I want to go.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
Aiden, go.
Yeah, because you just, as you're talking, and maybe I'm, you know, not getting the assignment quite right, so bear with me.
Go for it.
But I had a couple of thoughts that came that are sequential in my life, and interestingly, some of that gender euphoria and validation was in my prior presentation as female, and then some since then. So the first one I think about is as a teenager, being at, you know, one of those last slumber parties before everyone's too grown up to do it.
Uh-huh.
And you know, big gang of gals, you know, 12, 15 of them, and we're chatting and laughing and having a good time, and one person, one young woman is just staring at me and smiling, and I can't figure out like what's going on. I don't know why. And finally she just, in front of the whole group, she says, "Hey everybody, wouldn't Bonnie make a really cute guy?" My name used to be Bonnie, you know. "Wouldn't Bonnie make a really cute guy?" And whoosh, you know, blood rushes to my head, but I was so happy, you know, because just the joy on her face from looking at me and whatever she was thinking. And it was so, because everybody was young, it wasn't loaded. It didn't have an agenda. It was just pure, just an observation. That made me really happy. Then thinking later as a young adult and still prior to transition, I had an opportunity to, a big burly power lifter at the gym that I worked at, took me under his wing and said, "You should do powerlifting." And he taught me how to do things that my own mind would have said was impossible. And just watching my strength build and my musculature build was really powerful. And discovering, just discovering that I was capable of things that I would have thought impossible. And, you know, is that gender related? Well, I don't know. A lot of people think if you have a lot of muscles, that's more falls into the masculine category rather than the feminine. But nevertheless, there it is. And then the third thing that I thought of was definitely stepping into more recent years and doing groups with parents. And I decided a long time ago, my gender adventures began 25 years ago with transition. So this would have been easily in the past 5 or 10 years, let's say. But you know what? I got to a place of thinking, I don't care how anybody perceives me. I'm just going to be me. And that meant when I would see people that I really cared about, I would give them a hug. And so I gave this dad a hug. And, dad was kind of more like a construction guy. And, he'd get kind of stiff in his body. And I just hug him until I felt like I'm done with the hug. He didn't object, but it took about maybe only 2 times. And on the second time, I just felt his body just relax and ease into that hug and hold on. And to this day, he popped me a note on social media, says, I sure miss those hugs. Such a beautiful connection that is so often not allowed, especially men expressing that kind of affection. So those are things that came to mind when you were talking.
No, I think that's fantastic. I think you nailed the assignment right on the head. So I think that's great. I would say, I mean, I really, it's interesting from my perspective. Like I kind of, with that last sort of story you told, I had kind of a similar experience, but it was kind of in the opposite sort of direction of when I came out as trans and I started allowing myself to be more vulnerable and be more gentle and be more, all the things that like I was told not to be growing up and by, everyone in my life. I was meant to be, intense and trying to, very sporty, trying to win every game I play, like that sort of thing. And after I came out and people started, treating me differently, it was like, oh, people are like way more willing to hug me or to have intimate conversations with me and trust me and all those things. And it was an experience of unlike anything that I've ever had before. I think it was a really amazing thing. And I'm really lucky now that most days I kind of get to feel that gender euphoria every single day because I can dress how I want and I am in a space surrounded by, my sort of found family that I love and cherish, and they, make me feel safe and cared for. And I think that's a really incredibly relieving thing to have. And even at work, right? Like not everybody can say as a trans person at work, you can go there, people are going to respect your pronouns and understand who you are as a person. But, here I really do experience that. I think that is something that I am really privileged to have, and so it's really amazing that I can just wake up and even when I'm like, not wearing the most intense, like trying to figure out what's going to make me feel best clothes or whatever, even when I'm wearing the stuff, like I put on some sweatpants to go walk my dog around the block, it's like, I still feel really good about myself. So I think that I am really lucky that every day I kind of get to feel some amount of that gender euphoria. Anybody else want to share? You don't have to if you don't want to.
I'd be happy to share. I was thinking about how I feel like I'm reaching a stage in my life where I'm becoming more accepting of who I am and what my body is and my journey so far and all the rest of it. And looking back at how I used to approach things like business meetings where I would go in and actually try to remove as much femininity as possible because I found that it seemed to give men, especially the older generation who I was dealing with a lot of times, an excuse to just dismiss me. And now I find for one thing, I just don't care. I'm just going to do what I feel like doing that day. And they don't dismiss me, or if they do so at their own peril. And I think that's a lot of it, though, is just the attitude. And I was actually visiting with my 2 sisters last weekend, and we were all laughing at ourselves because we're all mothers, and we all seem to have taken on this filter of relating to the world as, in large part, as mothers. And we've also noticed that it seemed like for the longest time we were younger than everybody else, and now we seem to be older than a lot of other people. and we were noticing that we will often say sweetie or lovey. And so we were laughing that we have reached the lovey sweetie years, which I was actually looking forward to. I remember being in my 30s and feeling like I can't wait till I can be in that phase. And people don't think it's weird. Maybe they do think it's weird, but again, I don't care. So, but that's something that I do feel is kind of is me embracing the more feminine part of myself, is that sort of well, is this feminine or is this masculine? Just that open-heartedness and meeting people where they are, and approaching with an energy of nurturing. And for me, that's been very feminine, but I certainly have known nurturing men. So then I just get myself all twisted in knots trying to figure it out.
No, that makes complete sense. And for what it's worth, I am really excited for my sweetie and lovey years. I'm really like I am so excited for that time. That is going to be maybe my golden time. That is like the most exciting part of my life that I'm looking forward to, when I can say all that stuff. Oh, that's gender euphoria right there, right? That's exactly what I want.
It's good. I have to say it is.
And I do love the like I don't care anymore, like because I
Yeah.
feel that so much. I'm like I just don't have time or energy for your shenanigans anymore. So whatever, people. Like I love that. I
Yeah.
love being in that part.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I've
Good.
definitely had some moments where things have just made me feel like almost like I was gonna explode with happy through my life. Like there was actually a game that I used to play where my username was one of my nicknames is Bickle. I'm just gonna say, and my username was Ms. Bickle in the game, and I petitioned to have it changed to Mix Bickle, and I was walking along. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, so I was walking to the train to work, and I opened up the game, and I looked down and I saw that Mix Bickle, and there was just this like, it was so I can't even describe like how happy I was from it. It just felt like it was exploding out of me, and things like that where I'm like, oh, somebody sees me, when people use my pronouns, it makes me really happy. Because they're a little harder, it's a little harder for people to get the they them, and you have to actually know, it's not, somebody's not going to gender me correctly generally, unless I've told them what my pronouns are. And so having people use it or hearing people refer to me with those is definitely a really big deal. Those are some good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do we want to move on to the next question?
Yeah, because we actually only have about 15 minutes. Oh,
yeah,
wait,
right.
before we do that, let's do the thing.
Oh, let's do the thing.
Yes. Thanks everyone for being here this evening. We are doing this wonderful stream to raise some funds for trans families in our programming, and we are trying to raise $60,000 in 2 days. We're on day 2, and we have about 7 hours left to go of our fundraiser. We are right now at 25,930, so we're almost. It's at 43%. We're getting there. But we do need your support. So if you can help us out with the link in the chat, you can send that to friends and family. You can use it yourself, or you can send it to an enemy and tell them, if you really hate me, then donate here. Stuff like that. Whatever works, so that we can hopefully reach our goal by the end of today, which is not very long. So thank you.
All right. Yeah, so for this final sort of question, it's kind of taking everything that we've talked about and putting it into a thing of like taking an actionable step. I think it's always good to come out of a meeting, with action steps, things that you can do. So consider what you can do to explore your own gender euphoria. And here are a few ideas that you could use. You could try a new nickname when you're going for your coffee order. You could play a different gendered character in a video game, or you could do it in D&D or whatever you want. And you could also even do something like trying out new hairstyles. Kirby, I'm looking at you. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it is always good to explore who you are more. And so I'm curious to hear from you all. What are some things that you are trying to do? What are some examples for you of how you're trying to explore your gender identity continuously? Well, if nobody has an answer right now, I can go. I'm happy to do it. So I think it kind of goes off of what I was talking about before, and that what I need to do is to explore my gender identity kind of like unashamedly, and seeking some, like, I think one key thing for me is that since I came out as an adult and I missed out on so many like experiences as a kid and teenager, like I don't know certain like quote unquote feminine things. I don't, for example, like I have no idea how to take care of my hair, right? And I only just started learning this when I went to like a professional like hairstylist, and like I didn't know what products to use. I didn't know, because I have like somewhat curly hair, and like what things do I do there? How do I keep it healthy? And all those things. Like it's all that sort of stuff that I don't know, but there's sort of that sort of embarrassment that I am not caught up on those things. And it's a continuous learning process. And this is something everybody kind of goes through, but I think it's especially true for a lot of trans folks. So, I mean, that's something for me, is like trying to figure out, like another thing, I'm terrible at makeup. I don't know how to do makeup. And I find it like really hard to kind of let myself be bad at something like that at first. And then go through that learning process that I think a lot of people went through when they were younger. So I think it's my sort of thought here is just letting myself figure out what those things are, giving myself the space and opportunity now that I'm in a place where it's safe to do so, to try those things out, to learn those things and do them.
That's so funny that you mentioned that about the hair, because it's reminding me of my own struggles with my hair. I feel like I didn't figure out how to manage my hair until I was like in my 30s.
Oh, yeah.
And I also had great embarrassment about admitting that I don't know what to do with this thing on my head, or what products I should be using. I feel like I should have known by now. And I don't know. I felt like sometimes I was shamed for not knowing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's like, it's on the internet, there's like every single person tells you a different thing to do for different things. And it's like, I have no idea what's true and what's false and where to go for real information. I have no idea. So.
And then also sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to get that into it. I'm not one of those people who wants to spend all day long reading about hair and makeup.
Can't it be easy?
This just doesn't interest me.
Jeez. I mean, I think for me,
Stuff, girl.
I mean, I feel the same too, Cara. Like, I think that I had the same struggle I had. But I think part of getting older, which is nice, is like what Bonnie had said earlier. Like, I just don't care now. But also for me, it's the strict ideas I had in my head. For example, like I said, I was a tomboy. And so if I did want to wear something more frillier stuff, that I almost felt guilty for it. And so I never even allowed myself those things. And now that I'm older, I can do them if that makes me feel good. And in those moments where I'm just dressing how I want to dress, and sometimes it might be more pink frilly things, that I don't feel guilty about it anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not. And one of the things I'm really trying to grasp, and I think this is sort of along the same lines, but not necessarily just specifically gender, is not living as an apology. So not being apologetic for my body size, how I dress, any of that, like just being me. That's where I feel that euphoria. And it's not always gender related, but a lot of times it is, because that isn't usually an expression of how I feel, and so gender is a part of it. I mean, things like including changing my name, like that was really something I needed to do, and I didn't want to for the longest time because I didn't want to put people out and all that. You know, it's all sort of wrapped up in it. Anyway.
Well, and one thing that I've for a long time used to help explore different kinds of expression is cosplay. I love cosplay. I have all kinds of cosplay that my family and I used to go to cons, all Comic Cons all the time before COVID, and I love being attracted to a person, not in a sexual way, but just like, oh, I find something about that person attractive, and then trying to figure out a cosplay and figure out how I feel about myself in that, and seeing how people treat me in those different cosplays. So one of my favorite ones I do is the Fourth Doctor of Doctor Who, Tom Baker. Um, yes, I have a 16-foot scarf. I do, and I actually found when I used to wear that, I used to live in Utah. When I would wear it in Utah, people were uncomfortable with it. Because it was gender bending. I was gender bending, and I worked in a conservative school district, and I actually had people that wouldn't talk to me or come near me or let their kids trick or treat from my office because I was wearing a Tom Baker outfit, and then and apparently doing such a good job, they were uncomfortable with it. But then I've done other cosplays that might be looked at as more feminine, and enjoyed those as well. So I've really liked being able to find characters that resonate with me in some way, and then putting together a cosplay for that character, and then being able to see, like, what do people do? How do people bounce off of this, and what happens there? It's always really interesting.
It's really interesting you say that, because one of the people I live with talks all the time. Every time we're watching a show together or something like that, like a demon or like something with like red eyes or something comes on, giant claws, they're always like, oh, that right there is my gender identity. That right there, it's like they just feel attached to that character, and it's like, I kind of get it, right? Like, and they're like, why am I held back by my like fleshy body? What am I doing? It could be so cool. But I just think that's funny. Yeah.
Well, and when I a lot of people do describe their gender in ways that have nothing to do with the words that we've heard, like masculine, feminine.
Mm-hmm.
The ones I use to describe my gender when I'm in the company of people who would be happy to receive it or understand it is that my gender is a swirling purple glittery galaxy making a shruggy gesture.
I
That is
love
my
that.
gender. That's like the deep down gender there.
I like it. Very cool.
I think
What
for
else?
me to consider how to recognize and celebrate the moments of gender euphoria is just I can't change the outside world any more than I do, any faster, any bigger, anything. And so where do I have the greatest impact is with myself. I'm thinking about a time when a young woman came running up to me in a parking lot. And what of this memory, there's two parts to it. The second part is the one that I remember pretty clearly and have a difficult time with, which is she commented on my hands. She commented that, something about my fingernails and how small they were. It's not an uncommon experience for gender diverse people to have others comment on their hands. They're too small, they're too big, they're too whatever, right? So I remember her doing this, and I diminish the reason she came racing up to me. She was from a red state west of Washington. I don't remember if it was Idaho. But anyway, she comes running up. Seattle man, this is what she's saying. She wants to take my picture because I don't know. She's in town. She's in the heart of Seattle. And to her, my look represents Seattle. And man, I'm like, holy crap. So why do I take the one part of it and pop it out so huge when the whole reason for her racing her joy was finding a Seattle man that she could take a picture home and show all of her friends.
Your gender
Yeah,
Seattle.
I got some work to do. And by the way, my hair was probably the length of Kara's.
Oh yeah.
Time. Yeah.
So I can see the Seattle man now. I can see it.
I missed the hair. Let me tell you. Remind me to show you a picture.
You carrying a coffee with you too?
I pull it out all the time.
It's a good picture. It's a good picture.
It is a good picture.
Yeah, isn't that funny how we pick the thing? There's certain things that, right, that sticks out, and then the other stuff that the reason why this person ran to you was kind of a cool thing, right? But like, it's so interesting.
It is. It is. All right. Well, that is the worksheet, which is a great worksheet. We love this worksheet. I hope that those of you who have joined us have learned a little more about your own gender or about gender, or just had a good time with this discussion, because I certainly did. I really enjoyed talking about all of this with everybody here. I always like talking about this stuff because we don't get to talk about it as often as we want, and I think it's wonderful to be able to do so. So we are just about out of time. Does anybody have any last things you would like to say before we do the wave goodbye and end the stream?
I mean, I would just like to say thank you to everyone here. I feel like I learned so much about all of you all, and I know I'm pretty new to the organization, and I feel like it was a really great opportunity for me to get to know everybody and kind of build these sort of connections and relationships, and not even with you all, just you all, but with everybody who tuned in and watched. So I really feel grateful for that. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? All right. Now we got to do the wave thing. Thank you, everybody. Help the fundraiser.
Bye.